Hello everybody, what is up? Cobra here with another board gaming review. Today we have a new installment that is unlike other Axis and Allies games. This is, as you can see, Risk Europe, a completely different Risk game than I was expecting when I first picked this game up. Now, this is one of the games that I actually paid full price for. I saw it in a store recently and decided to pick it up because I've been looking a lot online for it and I really couldn't find it for a decent price. And what I really wanted it for was the pieces, because as you know, with stuff like my Ancient Empires game and World War I and World War II, and heck, even Modern War, I have a ton of different periods that I like to play Axis and Allies in. And I thought, hey, I'll pick one of these up, get the medieval pieces, and at some point I can play some kind of medieval Axis and Allies game that I make or somebody else ends up making. But I ended up reading through the rulebook, and this game actually seemed like it had a lot of potential behind it, and I really like it. So we're going to just be getting into a review for all of those people who want to kind of check out this game and see if you want to buy it yourself. So let's get into the contents of what's inside this game. So once we have the box down like this, you can see it is a pretty decently sized board game, but it is kind of, once you see what's inside, it's really kind of, compact in its box. You can really like slip this in a backpack or something and take it to a friend's house. It's not a huge game on the outside, but it can be pretty big once we open this thing up. So when we open it up, we get a pretty nice looking divider. Let me just move some of the stuff that's come out of play. But here we have the rulebook. Now the rulebook, surprisingly, for anyone that plays games like Axis and Allies, you'll find that it is extremely short. This thing's only about, I would say, 23 pages long, and the first couple pages are a lot of pictures and stuff like that. So it's a really quick read, really simple mechanics. Risk is pretty famous for that. That's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of Risk, because most of the time it's really a game of numbers. You know, you have more pieces, and that means you win a battle of some sort. With pieces like artillery and cavalry, more of being ways of designating more and more pieces you gain. But in this game, they actually have reworked pretty much everything from other Risk games that I've seen. And basically, we'll get into the rules later on, but right now we'll just see what you get when you purchase this box. So putting the rulebook aside, you can see we've got this really nice looking game box. Pretty impressive if you take it out for your friends. Now, one thing I do want to note is that these coins that you see here are not what you would get in the original game. Those I'll show you right now, just to get them out of the way. There are these coins. They're pretty nice looking artwork, and they are double-sided, but they are just kind of things that you pop out. Now, you can see here, you've got gold and silver ones to represent different numbers of coins. Here we have the map, and finally the unit organizer, that goes in on top of everything. Let me get that readjusted. There we go. So, as you can see, we've got 4 different nations. Now, this is a little different than other Risk games in a lot of respects, and one of them is that this game has a maximum of 4 players. Usually Risk games they run pretty high in the number of players that you can have, but this one keeps it simple with 4, and of course you can play with less than that. So, as you can see, again, we've got the armies. We'll go into the miniatures, but for the overview, we have castle pieces. We have these little crowns. A decent number of dice that come with the game. This cool little token that represents, let's get the light on it, it is got decent little artwork on it. It's just a plastic token. That represents the first player marker, so whoever's the first player gets that. Of course, you can't have a Risk game without the cards, although this deck kind of works similar to other Risk games if you've played them before, a little differently in other areas. They basically tell you how you can move your units, and they've got color specific for the different nations that we've got in this game. They don't really show up well in the light, but you can see that they have nice artwork on them and nice big fonts so you can see what they're trying to tell you. At the bottom here, you can see we've got these shields and what they say are different cities on them. So here we have Kiev, Berlin, Constantinople, and there are a couple others in here. And basically these are a part of an optional rule, and this game is really cool in the fact that it has a lot of optional rules, and one of them being that cities can have these special abilities. So let's say for London, when you collect tax, as you can see here, every time that you do so, you can place 2 free archers in London. So pretty cool little abilities that cities can give you. Kind of gives you impotence to attack certain ones and conquer them for yourself to gain those special advantages. Now, as you can see, we've got all of this. We have the map. Now let's get into the pieces that you'll be getting in this game. Alright everybody, here's all the plastic that you're going to be getting in this game. Now, as you can see, there's a huge kind of buff to this game. The thing that I love the most, I think, out of anything is just the actual units. As you have heard before, I really wanted to get this game because of the pieces, and they definitely did not disappoint. Now, if you know Risk in the past, they've usually just made a bunch of units and then recolored them for the different nations, and it kind of made sense, especially when it was like the Napoleonic period that they were famous for, where a lot of units had similar looking outfits, just different colors. But for this game, they've gone above and beyond and made really nice looking sculpts and printed them in different colors, and also have different sculpts for different nations. So basically, they don't name any of the colors or any of the nations, they just kind of give them separate colors. But how it's really supposed to go, the different units that you have here are the kind of what I would call the Muslim forces, pieces that would be coming from North Africa, Constantinople and such. Even though Constantinople at the time wasn't really a Muslim entity, you could have them coming up from the north, though. Places like Kiev have them represent like Hun forces coming from Asia. Here we have more of what I would think of the French being, mainly in terms of their symbols and everything, their seals and their uniforms. The blue is supposed to be kind of Germanic tribal forces, and you can see with their kind of what you might think of lower end technology in terms of their siege engines. And then over here we have the British up front in the green, and you can see with the cross and everything that is kind of what they're supposed to be representing. Now, getting into the actual units, just to show you up close. Oh yeah, and off to the side we can show you first. You get 8 castles that come with the game. These can help increase your defenses. We won't be going into how to play this, so I won't be going too much into that. But you can see we've got really nice looking brickwork and everything on the floors of these things. Really awesome looking piece. And the crowns, these represent kind of what I would call victory cities. If you know Axis and Allies, then you would know what victory cities are. And in this game, they work the same, where you capture these cities, they give you these crowns, and the more crowns you have, the closer you are to winning the game. And off to the side, I showed you before, but once more, here we have the first player marker. And in this game, players bid for the whoever controls the first player. And off to the side over here, we have the first player marker that I showed you guys before. And it is just a nice thick piece of plastic that represents the first player. So, getting into the actual pieces, for those of you that would like to buy this game for the units, if you're an Axis and Allies player and you want to have some diversification of units, here we have the really cool looking catapult. Most of these units actually have some sort of moving feature to them. They are a little bit loose, I would say, so say if you were going to paint these things or something like that, or use them a lot, I would say for this catapult, for instance, put it on, snap it into place, and then just put a dab of glue in there. You don't really need that swinging feature that much, and if you want to deal with it breaking apart, you can see that right now, yep, it fell apart again. So I'm probably going to end up adding some glue to these things to hold them in place. Here we have the orange cavalry, kind of cool looking guy, full on, armor, kind of similar to something like I said with like France. Here we have their kind of crusader looking knight. Very cool looking, I forget what that's called. It's like Renaissance era armor. I forget the actual name of it. Very rounded looking armor plating, kind of really complex and ornate. Here we have their archer. These basically are flags. You can see all of them down here. They represent the amount of crowns that you have, and of course the distance you are to winning the game. Here we have the Eastern forces and their really cool looking catapult. I really like this thing. I kind of like the swinging basket on the back. It really looks like it's in motion, which is pretty cool. And on the actual counterweight, really nice looking, kind of riveted, or not really riveted, but like bolts or screws or really large nails. Their cavalry looks amazing. lots of detail on there. You can see like almost every single rope. You can see he's got this nice looking flowing headdress. Very nice. Here we have a swordsman. You can definitely see the kind of Eastern inspiration here. Finally, for the Eastern forces, we have the kind of Eastern Ottoman archer. Kind of the same uniform that the swordsman had, just, you know, with bow and arrow now. Alright, so getting on to the Germans, or the Germanic tribal people. Their siege engine is... I don't know what to make of it. I'm not a huge fan of this. It's a battering ram, and you can see it's got 3 men holding it. But, I don't know, it's kind of a cool piece of equipment, but compared to the other ones on the board, their complexity, and also the fact of, like, not having actual units, you know, men, holding these things, kind of it broke tradition in that sense. I don't know what they could have used to maybe represent the Germanic siege engine. I think probably one idea I had would be like some sort of cart, like an armored cart that would have a battering ram within it. I know that those were a thing used back then, and you know, they would have been pulled by men on the inside and horses, but they would have been all enclosed, and that would have kept with the theme of having these kind of nobody's with them siege engine type pieces, especially since that siege engines in this game represent ranged weapons, and it also shows in combat where they get to shoot first. It kind of doesn't make sense that this would be considered a unit that would be, you know, I don't know, maybe charging in first to a battlefield. Next we have the Germanic cavalry. I really like this guy. He's kind of over the top with these 2 huge battle axes. He's wearing this big old like bearskin type garb on top of him. Has like a cape. Yeah, pretty awesome looking dude. Here are the infantry, kind of a low-tech style infantry, almost like looks like a Viking warrior with the really simplistic chainmail type armor, a big beard, and a big round shield. And then finally for the archer, again with the Germanics, I don't think the archer kind of fits the theme of them. If they're going for a more low-tech, barbaric type of look to them, it's kind of strange that the archer has a crossbow instead of a normal bow and arrow like all the other ones. I would have probably, if it was my opinion, which is kind of little niche things, but I would have made the archer with a crossbow maybe belong to the French or the British, one of the more high-tech civilizations at the time. Although all civilizations would have used crossbows by the medieval period, it's just that the theme that they were going for with the Germanics or kind of the more Nordic areas doesn't really match up with having the crossbows. But then getting on to the British, kind of what I dubbed the British forces, we have this awesome looking trebuchet type weapon that can pivot up and down. Pretty awesome looking piece of equipment. I'll definitely be using this in some other games, like my Ancient Empires game, probably as like a special Roman piece of artillery, like a really nice looking trebuchet, basically. Really nice piece. Here we have the really cool looking British kind of knight on his horseback. You can see the horse has got a nice looking battle dress kind of skirt. It's a bit more ceremonial type looking, you know, like a fencing match. You can see the guy with really heavy armor and a big long sword. Yeah, you can see you got the little slits in his helmet and everything. Really nice looking cavalry piece. Probably one of my favorites. Here we have the swordsman. This looks very British to me with the kind of pan style helmet. We have the big massive crossed shield, really big long trench coat, and a small little saber type sword. And then finally we have the British archer. Another nice looking piece, and the hat kind of keeps in theme with the rest of the British forces. But that goes for all of the plastic that you'll be getting in this game. And overall, that kind of sums up the overall what you basically get in this game. And now we're going to be going into the map, which we'll go over a quick little overview and then finish up the video. For the map, we've had to move away from my original filming area because this thing is really huge, considering the size of the game. As I was saying before, here we have the box that this thing comes in, and from the looks of it, basically, like I was saying, you get this small-looking, compact game on the inside, and then this really huge-looking map on the inside. It's really awesome though. Like, I think if you know me, and I like Global War and G40 and stuff like that, I kind of like bigger maps. The bigger the better with Axis and Allies, especially when you have miniatures, because the more space you have, just the better in pretty much every regard, as long as you have area for it. And since this is a map of Europe, they're able to make it, larger. It's not going to be a world-spanning map of this scale. It's something that can still go on your living room table or dining room table, but it still has the overall smallish square shape that can go, or basically have the amount of space that you're going to need to game on it. And as you can see with some pieces here that I'll place in Hungary, you can see that there is just a ton of space. Even in these, what I would call smaller areas up here, if you really pack in your forces with these square bases, just kind of, you should be able to get about 4 infantry kind of going across here, plus all the other pieces you may have. Could get a little tight in some of those areas if you had like stuff like castles, like say here in Venice. Having like a castle here might be a little bit of trouble because you might have a castle, a couple horses, a couple men. It could get a little bit tight, but overall I feel like for the strategic areas, these areas with these big cities and stuff, the places that you really are going to want to be fighting over, there's a ton of space. Over here we have the amount of crowns that you have. Again, like I said, capturing crowns, which are these city areas, basically leads you to winning the game. Really nice looking map overall. You can see we've got these nice little areas of artwork. We've got these dotted sea lanes. There's no naval combat or ships in this game. Basically, you would just be moving from area to area. I think that's pretty cool. I was thinking about adding ships, but then I kind of just thought, one, keeps it more simple, and also, adding ships is just another piece of complexity, and even though they were a factor back then, or in medieval times, it wasn't kind of the main stage, and it would kind of detract. In this game, it would especially kind of turn into a protect your coastline and invade coastline instead of trying to fight for naval dominance in certain areas. One other issue I would say, pretty much my only other issue with this would probably be, for one, I think that Scandinavia is a little too big. You can see if I put a unit up there, it's just huge. And of course, this map is pretty well scaled, but I think that kind of taking from Axis and Allies, and even Risk does it with their world maps, just to rescale some of the areas. I think that Scandinavia definitely could have been a lot smaller. Like, I would say to push it up and pretty much like cut it off around here would have been a lot better. And then they could have either expanded Europe, or another thing that I would have really liked is if they had added the whole North African coastline. I really don't know why they didn't add it, because while places like Egypt didn't have a huge amount of, I guess, namestay to the whole medieval conquest, there was a ton of what's it called, pillaging and crusades that happened down here, in the Jerusalem and the Holy Land region. So I think that would have been really cool to have down there. You could have had some kind of special victory city down there, kind of like how the different cities have different areas that could have been worth more. Kind of like how Rome in this game is worth more, because it's, controlling Rome would, back then, give you the legitimacy of being able to say you were the new Roman Empire, something like that. Whereas Jerusalem could have been an area similar to that. But I think overall, for, a stock game, keeping it simple, something that you could whip out with your family on a game night, it's a really nice board. I think the division of territories is pretty nice. The only thing that I would say in terms of changing territories is I wish that France here had 2 territories, maybe one with France, one with Paris. That could, be drawn onto the map. I just think it's kind of weird that you can enter down here and in one turn, you've crossed all the way up here. Whereas you've got places like Spain where, I guess at the same time, you've got areas like this where you can get all the way along the coastline. But it is just kind of strange that you can get from here to here in one territory, whereas you have to travel 3 over here. Same with France. Like France, you can get all the way over there, and you have to go 2 over here. So some areas like that are a little strange, but I think overall it's a really great map. As you can see, massive, really awesome. And the biggest piece that you'd be putting on this board, one of the castles, is not that bad. Not that bad. It doesn't take up that much space. So overall, I think that is the end of this review video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I definitely suggest you check out Risk Europe. See if you can get it for yourself, you know, for the map, for the pieces. Really nice game. And if you want to see me play this game, definitely leave a comment down below. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And overall, just like the video and check in for more awesome videos. Cobra